City, which is the home of 20 million people. Probably the United States is the home of more than 20 million Mexicans, which is reflected by the May Day struggle that we have going on here. But in this Mexico City is an annual conference that is held by, it's organized by a party called the Labor Party of Mexico, Partido de Trabajo. And every year they hold it, and they invite people from all over Latin America and a little bit from the rest of the world. And this year, and it's very broad, the meeting, in that you will have political positions. They're friendly to politicians, everybody from Michelle Bachelet of Chile, who is a sort of a center-left politician, normal politician, up to the comrades of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, not to mention Cuba, who always has a big delegation at this conference. So, yeah, you're going around the conference. Naomi is showing a few of the, yeah, go down to the next couple, Naomi. Where are we going? Yeah, just hit the forward. So you see a little what it looks like. There must have been at the peak about 400 or 500 people in that room. It felt very claustrophobic. But around the table and then right in back, there's a couple of hundred people, and they were from almost 40 different countries and like 110 different organizations. Workers' World Party was the only group represented from the United States. So we are able to play a big role there. Now, I want to say, start from here, because this really leads into the very critical situation that Venezuela is in these days because of the reaction of these parties and of the movement. But you ought to know a little bit about the conference itself. Keep clicking along, Naomi. This is, by the way, this is the tall person there, is the representative from the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, who gave one of the major talks. He spoke a lot about Ukraine. It was a little bit swallowed up because he spoke in Russian and it was translated, and those never go quite right, But he made that point. So it wasn't just that everybody was concerned about Venezuela. They're concerned about the rest of the world. Venezuela was on the top of their minds, and but they were very sympathetic to the position on Ukraine, like a position that we have. Keep going, Naomi. And also on Syria, this is Comrade Laila Ghanem, who's a friend of the party, who's a Lebanese, and she spoke about the civil war in Syria and the role of imperialism there. Now, keep on going. We try to make friends over here. So here's Berta with Adelita Guevara, and I'm with Manuel Zelaya of Honduras. Who were there? I mean, they're participating. Carlos Fonseca from the FSLN in Nicaragua was there, and other people of importance. This comrade is a young Cuban economist, Marxist economist, who had a position very much about the stagnation of the capitalist world. His name was Faustino. Go on, Naomi. This is Ivan Muniz, who's from Cuba. She spoke about how the Cubans were building public spaces democratically, figuring out how to do it, getting material from the government and doing it. Go on. This is a Haitian comrade who spoke there. Very interesting with the Haitian. There was 4 Haitians there, and at the end they asked the others to take a strong stand to remove the MINUSTA, because a lot, as I said, it's a very broad group, and they kind of include everybody in Latin America who's not lined up with the United States, So that means the Brazilians and a lot of them send troops into Haiti, even the governments that we would consider progressive. Anyway, go on, Naomi. And this is the representative, Ana Maria Osorio from the Socialist Party Socialist Unity Party of Venezuela. She's on a national committee. So she was one of the people. People spoke from all the different parties in Venezuela who support the government, more or less. But she was official representative of the PSUV. Go on. And these are two comrades from Puerto Rico who supported the liberation of Rivera, that's his name, and also for independence for Puerto Rico, which almost everybody there, probably everybody there supports. And this is a young Cuban communist who is very good at speaking. He gave quite a good talk. And he's not as young as he looks, but but he looks, he might be 20, but he looks about 14, right? Yes. He's a small person. And there's me. And I spoke mainly about Ukraine, about the attempt to reconquer, the imperialist attempt to reconquer the colonies and stuff, but mainly about Ukraine. About Venezuela, I said, well, I know others are going to speak about Venezuela. We went out and demonstrated on Venezuela, but I spoke about Ukraine, a short talk. But it got a very good response that I told them that we did demonstrations in 19 cities that were for out of Syria, out of Venezuela, out of Ukraine, U.S. imperialism. So, and that got a big hand. Okay, go on. And here's Berta speaking. Well, Berta, by the time she got to talk, you know how it is at these conferences? When you have 150 people speaking and the people in the front, except for me, take more than their allotted time. The ones at the end get squished. So she only had 5 minutes, but boy, did she make good use of it. Because you might have noticed there's a lot, even in my selection, there were a lot of women speaking. That was truer, much truer in this conference than in most of them, the other ones that I've been to. And, you know, some of them, like the one from Nicaragua, mentioned that in the Nicaraguan parliament, 40% or more of the women of the parliamentarians are women, almost all of them from the Frente Sandinista. And so Berta made a point of making note of that at the first point in her speech, and that brought down the House. And then went on to talk about low-wage workers and the struggle in the United States in a time of capitalism at a dead end, and the need to have joint actions internationally in support of low-wage workers. And that got a good response too. But as I said, she only had a few minutes to develop this talk. Now, this is what I want to come to with regard to Venezuela. For what reason, I don't know, but I was invited to a breakfast at the Mexican Senate. So I went. And there were about 20 parties there. And each of us had to say a little something about, you know, 2 minutes about our country and what we were doing. But this fellow on your right, my left, Osvaldo Mendoza, I think his name is, he was a senator for the Latin American Parliament from Bolivia, from the MAS party. That's Evo Morales' party. He said, let's break the protocol of these meetings where we don't do anything and stuff like that. We need solidarity with Venezuela. The Mexican senators they were the senators from the PRD and from the Partido de Trabajo. The PRD is the Social Democratic Party, which should have won the last couple of presidential elections but got pushed out by fraud. And they said, call a press conference so we can make a public statement. So they did. An hour later, we had a press conference right in the Mexican Senate. And it represented the same 20 parties represented. I was seated over here somewhere. And these were the comrades who were mainly doing most of the speaking. Go on, Naomi. And this is... Dolores Padierno. Right. Dolores Padierno, who is a senator in the Mexican. Go ahead, and Ana Maria Osario, and go on, and here's Zelaya. And stop here in Zelaya a minute a bit. Ana Maria Osario told about the situation in Venezuela. You know they had these guarimbas, which I'll tell you about later a little bit more. You know, the blockages by small numbers of fascists. But they were operating first in 18 municipalities. By the time she spoke, it was down to 6 municipalities. But they were still causing deaths of Venezuelans, including police and guards or people just going by. You'll see some pictures of it later. Even though from right now the Venezuelans sort of have that situation more or less under control, everyone at the conference, everyone here feels there's an ongoing threat from imperialism to Venezuela. And because Venezuela is sort of the linchpin and had been during the last 10 to 15 years the one taking the brunt of the struggle against imperialism, because of that, it's a threat to all the places in Latin America where there have been political advances. Now, let me we'll go a little later. And that's the reason Zelaya is important, of course, here, is that Zelaya is one of the places where there was a political advance, in that he made a decision to break with some imperialist things. And the next thing you knew, he is overthrown, see. And in 2011, the president of Paraguay was overthrown, but in a coup, what they call a sort of a parliamentary coup, not where the military comes in and shoots everybody, but where the parliament kind of throws you out. Go on, Naomi. Okay, here's an example of a guarimba. Now, it just shows you that class content counts. I could show this. If I showed this from that town in Spain, it would have been a progressive demonstration of youth fighting for jobs. But over here, it's a reactionary demonstration of what apparently is the wealthier youth, and they are fighting to overthrow the government because they feel they're losing some of their privileges under the government of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. It's at this time, one of the interesting talks at this conference was given by Roberto Regalado from Cuba. Some of the comrades may know him because he's somebody who's been in touch with the party since '72, really, and was in the mission here for a while too. So, but at this point, he's one of the ideological leaders in Cuba, at least who goes around to conferences and writes books and stuff like that. And he gave a talk, and what he talked about. War of positions in Latin America. And war of positions. War of position, well, that's just the phrase he used. Apparently it's from something Gramsci, the Italian communist, wrote. But what he was talking about was the attempt of U.S. imperialism to recuperate all the positions that it had lost since sort of 1998, when the Chavez government was elected in. Now, in all these places, you have right now, in Uruguay, in Brazil, in Nicaragua, and now in El Salvador. By the way, everyone mentioned, and maybe, March 15th, somebody from the FMLN got elected president of El Salvador. You have ex-guerrillas who are running these countries, but it doesn't mean that there's been revolutions there. They have not overthrown the state. They have not replaced it with a new army and police that represent the working class in almost all of these places. They have not seized the means of production and put them in the hands of the workers. All it means is that it is a change. There is a left party running the government. They have the government, but they don't have control of the state. And they are shifting and taking positions against the complete imperialist domination of the region. For example, stopping the trade pacts, like the NAFTA pact that kind of ruined the Mexican peasantry and hurt the working class of Mexico, the United States, and Canada to the benefit of the big imperialists. And they managed to stop some of those plans with most of the countries. But the U.S. is pushing its way back in, but with bilateral trade relations, like with Colombia, with some of the Pacific states, and by putting the military in, because the U.S. was thrown out of its base in Ecuador. That was a good step. but has increased its military presence in Panama, in Colombia, and I think in Paraguay too, and Honduras. Yeah. So this struggle is going on, and the comrades and all the friends there at that place see that the Venezuela struggle is an important part of it. And these guarimbas, these are, I mean, I think the comrades all know about this. Berta spoke about it here before too. But these are, it's sort of the way that the oligarchy and the wealthy people, the right wing in Venezuela, is using to attack the government, is to just set up these constant periods, sections of trouble. And in doing it, you know, the comrade mentioned April 4th, that it was when Martin Luther King was killed. Remember when Martin Luther King was killed? There were rebellions in 100 U.S. cities. It was much, much bigger mass participation and, you know, up than is going on in Venezuela. But right now, the entire imperialist media is playing up the Venezuelan events as if these are popular uprisings and as if the 39 deaths are caused because the Venezuelan government has shot down the people. See, that's the way it's being played. They're trying to play it in line, and everybody at this meeting knew it was a lie. The lie just keeps getting repeated, and people, you know what happens when they repeat the lie often enough. Some people believe it. Maybe a lot of people believe it. Anyway, here's at a crossroads, so it blocks traffic. Go on once more. Okay, now Maduro. Now it is. Maduro, you know, I imagine a lot of the comrades read that he had an op-ed in the New York Times in which he explained the situation well and hit the United States. And nevertheless, the Times put on a headline that said Maduro wants peace. I'm not sure what that means. But my guess is he's doing his best. You know, it's like some people would like him to act more firmly against these groups. I don't know what he's capable of doing. You know, the PSUV, the party there is not like a Leninist party that operates with a democratic centralism. They make a decision and everybody takes it down, carries it out, and functions. It's an electoral coalition. And they were able to win some important elections and push the government to the left. And of course, nobody has the personal charisma that Comrade Chavez had, where a lot of the power and the influence is centered in him and was not easily passed out to others or to organizations. And I say that only, I mean, what a lot of the revolutionaries are counting on is the continued loyalty of the armed forces to the revolution, which so far has not been completely overthrown. But you might have noticed last week that same thing happened. It was both a good thing and a bad thing. And the bad thing is that 3 Air Force generals were involved in a plot to overthrow the government, or at least that's what's reported, and I have to believe it because it's reported by the Maduro government, 3 Venezuelan Air Force generals. The good thing, of course, is that they caught them. Some other officers turned them in. So there was, at least at this point, there is more loyalty to the government. I did speak to one Venezuelan communist who, he's not the kind of person who looks at the world through rose-colored glasses, or in our case, red-tinted glasses. But he felt pretty confident now about the military. And that, in fact, he has access, he gives ideological training to the military, like day-long classes, to officers and rank and file. So that sort of is the basis of the stability of the Venezuelan regime, the government. They have problems providing for the people, and they probably have problems within their own organization of the government. But the biggest problem is the problem caused by the imperialists and by the Colombian right-wing government, who has infiltrated paramilitary forces into the, let's see, where's the, I figure out the geography of it. Those provinces, states that are on the border with Colombia or near the border with Colombia, which happen to have Táchira is the main one, but there's a couple others over there too that they still have some problems with. Now, so the main thing that came out of it, I think, and I think for ourselves too, to think about, is to how to continue doing work of solidarity with Venezuela, as we do with Ukraine. I mean, I think it was very good that we did those the demonstrations in the 19 cities, and Ukraine was much more of a challenge to explain, or at least seemed to be at the beginning. But I think both with the U.S. population and with the just as it was with the meeting of the Latin Americans in the Mexico City, there is a lot of understanding of the Ukrainian situation too. And the Venezuelan situation, from the point of view of real struggle, needs solidarity and needs to have manifest show of solidarity throughout. I mean, that was also came out at the end of the conference, that the comrades said, well, we can't just have a statement in solidarity with Venezuela. We got to go out into the street and organize demonstrations, organize public meetings with Venezuela. And I think that we should consider doing something here that raises a discussion of really of both of these, since we're in the center of, as a lot of the people said, including me, we're in the entrails of the monster, the belly of the beast, whatever you call it. We have a duty to do solidarity work and to stop U.S. imperialism in Venezuela and in Ukraine, and probably in Syria too, while we're about it, and make sure that this question is brought before the entire U.S. movement, and as much as possible before the U.S. population. Thank you, comrades. And answer the two questions that were raised. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'm going to try. One, yes, they did talk about fascism. They talked about fascism in Ukraine. I mean, they used the word. They said fascism about fascists. They call that to the ones who were doing stuff in Venezuela. But they did not use fascism as an analysis of where these forces came from or how they were doing. And in the two places, they're really two different forces. As far as I understand, in Venezuela, it's mostly youth of the more wealthy elements in Venezuelan society that are from universities and stuff, and that have been recruited in. They may have some more, poor elements too, that are mercenaries or something like that. But I haven't heard of that. That hasn't been something that's been emphasized. The fascists in Ukraine are the old kind of fascists. They're the anti-Semitic, even, and anti-Russian. Even they're not communist in Russia anymore, but they're just anti-foreigner, anti-Semitic, and anti-Russian, and Ukrainian nationalist. And it's on that old sort of almost racist, reactionary basis that it's being mobilized. So it's that kind of fascist. And then the U.S. imperialism, in its attempt to reconquer, also makes use of the most reactionary of the religious groupings in the Islamic world against, the more progressive regime, like in Syria. So in all places, they're using reactionary elements that aren't really 100% with well, not so much in Venezuela. They are completely with imperialism, but in the other places they have their own agenda. So I'm not sure just what calling them fascists helps us, except if it gets you madder at them. and that makes you do more, then maybe that's useful. Otherwise, we should just analyze them piece by piece, and I think that's what Regalado had in mind. I mean, I haven't read a lot. I haven't read hardly any Gramsci, so I'm not sure how to comment on what Mike wrote. He's not easy to read. He wrote while he was in prison, and he wrote to get around the fascist censorship, so you have to really work at it. But one thing that he emphasized was how to win over the masses, to win over the people to the struggle, and that's what Regalado was talking about. With that, the left is going to be involved in struggles, and Roberto Regalado is the Cuban guy who wrote the thing that mentioned Gramsci and mentioned organizing. Left people in government, and he says, like, well, if you make mistakes and alienate a part of your base, you got to go find a way to win them back. In other words, he was bringing up Gramsci as finding a way to win popular support, even under difficult circumstances. Explain to them where, if you're eliminate inequalities, do stuff like that, so involve them in the struggle as much as possible. I think that's mainly why he raised Gramsci and why he raised this war of positions. But he was just drawing a picture of U.S. imperialism and its strategy throughout Latin America and how the left has to try and counter it, even if it's not in a position to actually take power in the old way, which is what we all would like to see, where there's where the left actually makes a big revolution, puts in its own state in some country like Brazil, and then can confront imperialism, or at least can defend itself against this monster. And you have a worldwide monster that has hegemony and militarily, even though it's filled with flaws. We call it with the feet of clay, with its economic system falling apart. But it's a big threat to the world, and in order to combat it, the people have to be mobilized as best as possible and won over to the struggle and won over to supporting the most progressive elements possible. So we got to figure out how to, and I think he was saying, we in the left in Latin America have to figure out the best way of doing that. And we over here right now have to try and build a resistance within the United States, which is on all different levels. Okay, thank you.